All right, welcome back. So, in the last two lessons, we've been talking about these growing problems in Rome. The cracks in the foundation of their power and prosperity, and how well they're doing. Now, it doesn't mean that it's just really bad just yet. Rome is still, life seems great. They're expanding. It's just crazy, but there's just those problems. So, again, the last two videos, the first of those two videos was talking about those growing problems, even while they're expanding. And the second video was talking about some of these major reforms to answer these problems, but I refer to them more as like Band-Aid fixes because they really don't solve the core problem, that is those cracks in the foundation that all of a sudden people are starting to turn away from those morals and values that established Roman power and prosperity in the first place, in a major way, I guess you should say. They're turning away from them in a major way, at least some people are in power. Not the entire Roman populace. So, well, most of them. Anyways, this all leads up to that Marius reform where all of a sudden armies are now more loyal to their generals than they are to the Republic. Very bad sign. And that initiates basically a series of civil wars. Now, when we look at their civil wars, there's 5 total that we're going to be talking about. And this might have to go over a video or two. I don't know if I'm going to get through all of them now, but there's about 5 total civil wars. At the end of this whole process of civil wars, Rome transforms from a republic into an empire. So through all this process of civil wars, the republic does die. And again, as Americans, and I said this in class a lot. I don't know if I said this in my video lessons, but as Americans, this is an aspect of Roman history that we personally are very, very afraid of. Incredibly afraid of, where we'll get to the point where we'll jack ourselves so much from the inside out that in order to kind of have more of a safe and secure society and more of a safe and secure situation in life, that we'll be willing to give up our personal freedoms and to do so, because that's essentially kind of what happens in Rome. That it didn't feel like it at first. It felt like life was just fine, everybody's good, everything was good, but over your head was always this idea that the emperor could just ruin it if he chose to, that you didn't really have any personal security in anything, and that the law didn't protect you necessarily any longer. So, and by the way, one of the video clips I like to show, again, I would show it here if it doesn't get copyright hacked off of YouTube, or copyright struck off of YouTube. Heck, I don't know why I said that, but anyways, episode 3 of Star Wars definitely goes back to this, where you have Emperor Palpatine saying, "I'm going to reform the Republic into the First Galactic Empire for a more safe and secure society." Right? That is just straight from switch from Republic to Empire of Rome. Like the inspiration behind that scene in Star Wars is just glaringly obvious to me. So, anyways, and getting back to these civil wars, of the 5 civil wars that we're going to be talking about, this first one, I don't know if this is a great way to put this, but you could say it's like the one real legit civil war. Yes, it was enabled a bit by those Marius reforms that armies can be loyal to their generals. But when I say legit civil war, this is the idea that this civil war was actually started over this festering idea of what it means to be a Roman, who should have a say in the government. And you look at this and say, well, yeah, that's a good question. Because at this point, you're at about 100, roughly, or you're about 100 BC. You're a couple hundred years into about almost 400 years into the Republic itself, where the Republic has been going on now since 509 BC. And you have all these groups of people, like the Latin peoples, the Samnites, the Etruscans, the Ligurians, the Greeks of southern Italy, and the people of North Italy as well. And they're all thinking, we have been in Rome for a long time. We like being in Rome. Like there's a lot of advantages to Rome. Like this society is actually pretty good. This sense of security is pretty good. This free life is pretty good. And at the same time, we've been contributing men to the Roman armies. We've been contributing to this. We've been paying our taxes. Why don't we get a say? Why can't we elect people into the government at this point? And by the way, something I completely skipped over. I think I meant to talk about this in the last 2 lessons, and I didn't. But remember the whole patrician versus plebeian thing? Man, I should really have more of a dedicated lesson to this one. But the patricians versus plebeians. In the beginning of the Republic, the patricians have all the power. Plebeians have no say. Over time, though, the plebeians do get a say, and they actually start getting a vote, and you get what's called the tribunes. elected representatives to represent the plebeian voice in the Senate, and they kind of acted like a third consul almost. And so the patricians had the vote initially, then the plebeians get the vote, and now you have all these other Italians that are saying, well, we want the vote too. We want to say in our government, we feel a part of this. We feel like we should have a say. And at this point, the Romans are like, no, that's just not the way it's done. The law says no, so too bad for you. And the Italians decide, well, screw that. We're going to fight back against you on this one. So you have this massive war called the Social War, which is the Roman First Civil War, which is basically between Rome and the rest of Italy. And it was an even fight. They both have the same legion system in place. They're both used to fighting that way, and so they go pretty hard at each other. The war goes on for a while. Lots of people die. And in the end, this causes problems around the entire all the Roman territories, because all of a sudden they start getting attacked by enemies. They're seeing Rome looking weak at the moment. It's like, hey, now's our chance. Let's pounce on Rome. And so the Roman Senate is like, all right, Italians, let's do this. Let's say, basically, it goes more into this, but here's basically the way it goes. Hey, Italians, let's say you guys need to say that we won the war and we will give you the vote. And the Italians are like, okay, you win. All right, you have the vote. And then they combine their armies back together and they go off and just destroy all their enemies once again. But of course, what seems really dumb is just like, well, you just went through this massive war that took years and years and years and thousands of lives just to get to a point where you could have decided without all that death. Give the Italians the vote, which happened. So in a way, even though the Italians said the Romans won this war, they did win. They got what they wanted. So, but that's the first civil war, which again, I use the term saying a legit civil war. If you ever believe there's any war that's ever justified type thing, where it's like people wanted to feel more part of their country and they felt like they were being denied that. So, but these next couple civil wars, not so much. So, the next civil war. We need to talk about, before we get into this next civil war, we need to talk about this guy, a guy named Sulla. Becomes a major character, just as big as Marius in Roman history. So, and if you want to think about this, Sulla is like the leader of the other political party. So Marius is kind of in charge of his political party. Sulla's in charge of his political party. And in a way, they split Rome between the two. If you want to think about this like Democrats versus Republicans in America today, a little bit like that. Not exactly, but a little bit like that if it helps you understand these two. So basically these two get into a major, major argument with each other. Like they do not agree on what is going on with Rome and how Rome is being run. And really the way it kind of goes, just in a nutshell, Marius feels like Rome needs to change and kind of give up on some of its old adages and institutions, and kind of become a new type of creature to kind of meet the needs of the new age, I guess you could say, where Sulla thinks, no, there are reasons why we rose to power and we need to stick to that. And one of the reasons why that we have had so many problems, so many social problems, is because guys like Marius keeps putting these problems in there and undermining those Roman values. And because we've undermined all those Roman values, Rome has become a much worse off place than it used to be. And when you look at this, well, in a way, you could say they're both right in some cases. You could also say they're both wrong in some cases. Not going to delve too much into that. But at least in Sulla's case, at least because we're talking about Sulla right now, he definitely had it right in the idea of like, yeah, he saw those cracks in the foundation. He saw that that was what was wrong. And this all culminates into a major, major battle, a civil war between him and Marius, basically. Although Marius actually passes away during this whole thing, not in the war, but just old age. But the people that believe in his way of things keep things going. They have this massive battle. I probably should put it on here. It's called the Battle of the Colon Gates. It was right outside of Rome. It was right on the outside walls of Rome. This huge battle. Two epically big Roman armies going at it with each other. And Sulla wins the day. Sulla wins, and you could say it's his political party then wins. And so then Sulla takes over Rome. He becomes dictator of Rome. Now, he doesn't stay dictator longer than than the 6 months. But even after he's dictator for those 6 months to fix Rome and make Rome good again, everybody knows if you don't do what Sulla wants, well, too bad for you. Because as dictator, one of the things he thought was like, well, I know what's wrong with Rome, is that the fact that you have all these people that are going against our values. So the best way to fix this is to kill all those people. So he basically puts up what are called prescription lists, and just has all these names, thousands of names, and these are important people in Rome. I say important, like people with power, people with wealth in Rome. Now the movers and shakers says, well, these 2,500 people need to die. I actually don't know which number it was, but something like that. And he executes a lot of people, very powerful people. Of course, most all of them on the other side of the aisle type thing, in the other political party. But his thought process is like, if I can get rid of these people that were willing to manipulate Roman values, that undermined our society, then it won't happen again. And like today we look at a guy like Sulla, at least in his situation, from, you could say, maybe a Roman perspective. And it's like, well, you get it. You understood the problem of Rome, but from your actions, we definitely see how that didn't work so well. Like all you did is made a lot of people more afraid of you than anything else. Like you operated out of fear. So Rome became a good place under his rule, you could say, under his overlordship, may be the best way to put it. But people weren't acting good or of good Roman values because they necessarily wanted to. They did it because they were fearful of what the reprisals would be or how Sulla would come down on them, which means that people weren't really changing. It wasn't really getting rid of the problems. It was just covering it up, again, like a Band-Aid fix, like the Band-Aid covers the wound type thing. So the one thing that you could give to Sulla's credit is that after a while, when he thinks that I've done it, I fixed Rome, Rome is a good place now, he retires. He goes off to his farm and just says, all right, I've done it, I fixed Rome, so I will give up power. I'll be like Cincinnatus or whatever. So, but anyways, this is definitely one of those examples where he's like, if you remember the lessons from ancient Greece, he's like Draco, ruling through fear. And that's short-term maybe, but not a long-term way of doing things. So, and it definitely doesn't fix Rome for good. So, of course, other civil wars come down the pipe. So basically things get bad again. Rome realizes things are bad again, so they come up with a new idea. So this is after Sulla, and basically thinking, okay, we just need to, how are we going to deal with this? Things are just getting bad. How are we going to deal with this? So they come up with an idea called the triumvirate, where they say, all right, let's do this. It was kind of good to have one person in charge for a while, but we don't like that because we don't want one person in charge because, well, we're a republic and we don't want to have kings. So let's do this. Let's give three people kind of like almost like monarchistic type of power. We'll call them triumvirates. And because there's three of them, and these are the three, Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, all very powerful, all very popular. And, well, especially in the case of Crassus, one of the richest men ever to live in human history. And these guys are just seen as like, all right, we'll give them all this power and they'll check and balance each other. Because all three of them have kind of this ultimate power, this ultimate say, they'll check and balance each other. So just take a step out of what we're talking about with Rome right now and talk more about, say, the founding of the United States. This is one of those situations that we look back at Rome and say, they almost had it there. The triumvirate wasn't a bad idea at all. And the idea of at least having people with pretty important powers that you could argue are very needed to administer over a nation, basically, but they check and balance each other. The problem is that, at least in Rome's case, they put the power in the person, meaning Crassus has that power, Julius Caesar has that power. We took that idea and they switched it to the idea of the powers in the office. So the executive branch, which is the President of the United States, has that power, and whoever is the president at the time has that power, but he doesn't have that power once he's out of office. So whoever the president is currently has that power, but once that president leaves, will not have that power any longer. The power's in the office. The judicial branch, same thing. The legislative branch, same thing. So we, in a way, have copied that triumvirate idea. judicial branch, executive branch, legislative branch are the powers in the office. Because we'll see in a second here, the triumvirate, putting the power on the person, was a really bad idea. So, because there's one simple thing that ruins all this, and that is that one of them dies. And in this case, of the three that dies, arguably is the most powerful of the three, and that is Crassus. Crassus, an incredibly rich guy. I could go a lot more into this one. And just how he got that riches is also, well, anyways. Corrupt firefighter. Well, anyways. So, let's put it this way. He has his own personal army. He's incredibly rich. Of course he has his own personal army. You know, and because he is, you could argue, a true Roman, he definitely stands up for Rome. He uses that army to defend the honor of Rome, yada, yada, yada. Then he decides, I'm going to go attack the next biggest empire out there, which at this point is the Parthian, or aka like Second Persian Empire. And unfortunately for him, he didn't know really how to deal with the desert. He relied too much on faulty information from his his scouts, which ended up being spies for the Parthians. And he gets trapped, and, well, his army really just takes a hit, let's put it that way. Isn't fully destroyed, but Crassus is kind of lured into a situation where he gets killed. The Roman army isn't able to deal with the horse archers very well. But anyways, he dies. And by the way, when he gets captured, just the story goes is that the Parthians knew why he was there, and he was there to kind of advance his own glory and wealth and stuff like that. So it was said that they took his wealth, or he took his gold that he brought with him, melted it down, and poured it down his throat. That's kind of the picture you're seeing there. If that really happened or not, I'm not sure, but but it definitely gives you maybe an interesting way of saying a crass death. So, but the problem here now is that Pompey and Caesar are the two triumvirates standing, which means now instead of like having a three-way split of power with checks and balances, now you only have two. And that's a perfect setup for the next civil war, which, man, I'm really brushing over things. Like, just so you guys know, this is the part of Roman history that if you get into Roman history, you really deep dive into. This is the really fun stuff, is when you get into these wars, especially between Caesar and Pompey, and then what Caesar does to kind of gain power and just how closely run. Anyways, I'll stop jabbering here. This is supposed to be just basic. But they get into a third civil war. Just long story short, Caesar wins. Pompey ends up getting killed, interestingly, by the Greek Egyptians. But anyways, Caesar wins, and now he's the last man standing. He is the most powerful person in Rome. In effect, he's basically the next Sulla. What he wants done is going to happen. And of course, he does make himself dictator. But then he names himself, as dictator, does something that even in the beginning of the Republic, they realized could happen, but they thought no one would ever do this. No one would ever be that unpatriotic, you guys could say, to do something like this and ruin the Roman government. That is, as dictator, since you can do anything you want as dictator and say anything you want, change the law on dictators. So instead of being dictator for 6 months, you can be dictator for life. He didn't go straight from dictator for 6 months to dictator of life. He actually went more like, I'm dictator, but I don't have enough time, so I'm going to extend dictator to 3 years. But at the end of those 3 years, he's like, well, I'm going to extend it for life. I just needed my whole life to make sure Rome's a better place. And arguably, Caesar definitely was looking to make a better Rome. He had a lot of good ideas that he was putting in effect that was helping out the majority of Romans. But he did completely, just in the face of all Roman tradition, government, and law, name himself dictator for life, using that loophole, I guess you could say. Because of this, even many of his best friends and people, and very trusted people he had around them, turn on him and murder him. So, if you've ever seen the Shakespeare play of Julius Caesar, or heck, even the movie Aladdin, they're just talking about Caesar salad and that big arm come out with a knife and says, et tu, Brute? Well, as the story goes, one of the guys he seemed to, how to put this, he liked a guy named Brutus. It turned on him in the end, which of course starts the next civil war. So you guys seen this, civil war, boom, civil war, civil war, boom, civil war, boom, just one right after another, it seems like. But basically what happens is one of Caesar's most dedicated generals, a guy named Mark Antony, along with Caesar's favored nephew, a guy named Octavian, or I should say a boy named Octavian, he's kind of young at this point. They team up with all those, you could say, loyal to Caesar, and basically go after the murderers of Caesar. And this starts the Fourth Civil War. Again, these are Roman armies on Roman armies for the fourth time. And, well, long story short, Mark Antony and Octavian win. And then they decide to set up a second triumvirate. Notice I don't even mention the second triumvirate here. It's just kind of like everybody knows who's really in charge. Even though they get a third guy in there, a guy named Lepidus, it's really Mark Antony and Octavian who really control the power in Rome. And you're in the exact same situation as you were before with Caesar and Pompey. Like, one guy's going to overturn the other guy. And in this case, they turn on each other. Mark Antony and Octavian do. Octavian pretty much has control of like the western side of Rome. Mark Antony gets control of the eastern side of Rome, especially Egypt. I shouldn't say especially Egypt. Is in love with the Queen of Egypt, a lady named Cleopatra. Octavian is actually able to use that kind of love, or that sinister affair between Mark Antony and Cleopatra to basically turn a lot of Roman public opinion against him. Yeah, and the fact that Mark Antony starts dressing more Egyptian than Roman, that doesn't really help out. Wasn't a good PR move, let's put it that way. But this is the Fifth Civil War between Mark Antony and Octavian. And, Octavian wins this one at what's called the Battle of Asculum. After this, both Mark Antony and Cleopatra commit suicide. Yes, there's so many stories that goes into this. There's movies and blah, blah, blah based off of this and the whole thing. I'm just really browsing through it, but just giving you the basic history. There you go. But that is the fifth and final civil war. And basically you have Augustus, or I shouldn't say Augustus, Octavian, who later names himself Augustus as the last man standing. And it really is he who switches the republic to an empire. So with this last civil war is the death of the republic. And I'll explain more about that in the next video.